speakers have referred to our cultural traditions. If we keep that in mind, then I think the discussion on this book or publication of a book on Veer Savarkar acquires greater significance and relevance. The whole story, if you read the history, I am talking about the history, how Veer Savarkar has been dealt with. I am not talking about his whole life history. How he has been dealt with. It's a story of trying to cancel out people, cancel out views, give bad name to those who differ with you, and then condemn them. For argument's sake, I will accept every criticism which is made against Veer Savarkar. And I will ask the critics that if you don't like his views, if you don't agree with them, you disdain them, even then it is absolutely essential to know what he has written, what views he has. Because for criticism also, you need to know about the thing or person which you want to criticize. And because you have referred to cultural tradition, the cultural tradition of India, and we can greatly take pride in it. The cultural tradition is that out of the 6 schools of philosophy, Indian philosophy, one is named after Charvak. The Indians did not accept anything, the overwhelming majority of Indians did not accept anything which was said by Charvak. But they did not try to insult him. They did not try to deride him. Instead, they acknowledged his cerebral power. And he called him Mahatma. We are calling Mahatma, you are calling Mahatma somebody with whom you do not disagree, you do not agree at all. You violently disagree with him. He profaned everything which Indians held to be sacred. Yet nobody threw a small stone at him. This is what India is. Now, for so many years, and for that one reason, I may agree or disagree with the views of Veer Savarkar, but it will be very difficult to deny that the man was a great revolutionary. What is the definition of revolution? The definition of revolution is to destroy the existing order and replace it by something which one considers is more wholesome for the society. He was such a revolutionary that even on a tragic moment like the death of his wife, he did not allow the normal ceremonies, did he? No, his son performed the things, and which he later said that if he, as his son, he wants to perform certain ceremonies, it's okay. He was such a revolution. Even, I do not want to mention here, but he has written other articles which I think even today those who are great admirers of the revolutionary zest and spirit of Savarkar, they won't agree with him. Why? Because they offend religious sensitivities. And he is being attacked that he was a religious fanatic. That I find interesting. Man who himself, I think Mahatma Gandhi started the movement untouchability later. Savarkar started and very effectively started in the first he started. And we must not forget, this I find very important. There is a very famous book of outliers, Malcolm Gladwell. He said that who you are cannot be separated from where you come from. And it is not only the place, the time is also important. Because in India, we have this concept. There is Sanatan Dharma, there is Yug Dharma, there is Kal Dharma, there is Desh Dharma. You can't apply the same standard all the time, in all the ages, all the places. You can't apply the same standards. It is important to... I was asking this question to myself. Suppose Savarkar was born in Kerala. I'm sure he would not be holding the same views. Because Kerala, he would have been brought up in a different milieu. Indian culture is the only culture in the world which is defined not by language, not by language, not by your race, not by the color of your skin. It is defined, this is the only, because all these criteria, they are not all inclusive. If you make language the basis, people who speak other languages, they will be excluded. The colors of the skin of the people, they differ. Their customs and rights differ. What you will make basis to define your way of life, that is your culture, that is your civilizational values. So Indian rishis, the true sages, they had the wisdom to define the Indian way of life. The basis which they used was Atma. Atma does not exclude anybody. Great Shankaracharya who was born in Kerala, he is given credit for unifying India at a time when it was badly politically divided. There were so many states, and the credit is given to him for what? That he set up 4 mutts in 4 different parts of the country. But can buildings bring unity of a society? No. What we do not talk about is the 4 Mahavakyas which from the Vedas which he gave to each mutt. And what were those 4 Mahavakyas? They did not convey different meaning. They conveyed the same meaning, although their sources were different. They came from 4 Vedas. Aham Brahmasmi Tattvamasi. The divinity dwells in me, same divinity dwells in you. Prajnanam Brahma. Ayam Atma Brahma. 4 Mahavakyas from 4 different Vedas. He gave one to each of these mutts. This was his message. The building was not important. The Mahavakyas were important. So the point I am making is that our way of life is defined by Atma, which is all inclusive. which does not exclude anybody, not even animals and the plants. If you really believe in this way of life, then you will have to be sensitive to the pain of the animals and plants also. You can't escape that. There is no doubt that Veer Savarkar, those who criticize him, I totally agree with Udayji, that they use selective passages. If they take holistic view and read the whole thing in a context, then possibly it will become, I am not saying that then they will stop criticizing. No, that is not what I am saying. But it will become very difficult for them to criticize. So the point I am making is that when I refer to Sanatan Dharma, Yug Dharma, Desh Dharma, Kal Dharma, we also have an Apat Dharma. How to deal with emergency situations. The normal standards will not apply there. Even if there are selective passages, yes, there are, where he sounds to be anti-Muslims or anti-somebody. We should concede that. At least I concede that, despite being great admirer of his revolutionary spirit. Was he against the Muslims? Read his passages on the uprising of 1857, and there it becomes absolutely clear what he stands for. He is not against anybody because this anybody belongs to one particular community. He is against, and that is why I raised that question. If he were born in Kerala, the attitudes, why I should have any hesitation in admitting that in North India particularly, a certain section of the Muslims developed a supremacist attitude. We have ruled over this country for so many 100 years, and it is our right to dominate over others. You read the passages of Veer Savarkar. Veer Savarkar is against this attitude, because while praising 1857, he names Hindu and Muslim heroes, showers equal praises on them, and he says that this, when they came together, this was not a relationship of the dominant, the superior and the inferior. They behaved like one family, they behaved like the brothers, and he was full of praise for it. So was he against any community? No, he was against a particular attitude. And if you disagree with that attitude, then it does not mean that you are against any particular community. If some context is there, then I will definitely mention that after 1986, 5 attempts were made to finish me. Who made these attempts? And what mindset persuaded these people to make physical attacks on me? Why? Same supremacist attitude. How can you differ with us? Outside Parliament House in 1986, out just barely 500 meters away from Parliament House. Those days, the agitations and these protest meetings were not held at Jantar Mantar. They were allowed to come up to India Gate. And the call was given, which was published prominently. People even do not remember today. Call was given from India Gate lawns to break the legs of all those MPs, particularly Muslim MPs, who differ with Muslim personal law board. Now, if I speak against those utterances, do I become anti-Muslim? No, I am speaking against that attitude, where you feel that nobody can criticize you or nobody can differ with you. Just that supreme. Savarkar was against that. And here, the whole life, the man, what all that he suffered and everything, his last interview before 3 months before his death was published in Organizer. Now please listen to this carefully. The correspondent of the Organizer is asking him, what is the India of your dreams? In this short, because this he is speaking 3 months before his death. Now all his experiences, all the knowledge, all the wisdom that he had gathered in his life, I would say this was the culmination of that. And he says, my India would be a democratic state in which people belonging to different religions, sects, or races would be treated with respect, with perfect equality, not respect, with perfect equality. None would be allowed to dominate others. This is what has made him different. He resented that some people try to dominate others. This he resented. This affected his state. And what's wrong with that? Why we should allow anybody to dominate any other person? None would be deprived of his just and equal rights of free citizenship so long as everyone discharged the common obligation which he owed to the state as a whole. Hindustan, the motherland and the holy land of Hindus, from the Indus to the seas, would be an organic, undivided state. The Hindus would be a caste, please listen to this carefully. The Hindus would be a caste-less society, a consolidated and a modern nation. Science and technology would be encouraged. There will be, this again in Kerala particularly, this is very important, what he is saying. There would be total liquidation of landlordism. Put an end to that. Not just that. The next sentence will make many people uneasy. All the land would belong to the state eventually. He wanted the land to belong to the state, not to be held as private property. And this is his last interview. I don't think any communist in Kerala can sound more radical than Savarkar. All key industries would be nationalized. India would be self-sufficient in respect of food, clothes, shelter and self-defense. The India of my dreams would have unbounded faith in a world commonwealth. Vasudev Kutumbakam. We have certain obligations and duties towards the whole mankind. Because the earth is the common motherland of all. but India would not go down under the evolution of this world commonwealth. The foreign policy of a militarily strong Akhand Hindustan would be a policy of neutrality and peace, and a powerful centralized state of Hindustan would contribute effectively towards an enduring peace and prosperity of this world. Many people find fault with him for he wanted India to be, in military terms, to be very strong. And the history has proved that whatever he said was not off the mark. And in fact, many a time people confuse ahimsa. The meaning of ahimsa, non-violence, how it has been defined. Non-violence is not to be timid. Non-violence is not to be fearful. Non-violence does not mean that you allow the aggressor to overtake you. What our tradition tells us, agarta chaturo veda, prashta sasharam dhanu, idam brahmam, idam chhatram, shastradapi shastradapi. We should have the wisdom of the scriptures, of the Vedas, but at the same time we should also be fully armed. On one hand, we should have the soft power of knowledge, wisdom, and on the other hand, we should have the power of the weapons. We should do our best to settle conflicts by using soft power. But if the aggressor is hell-bent on mischief, then we cannot accept the aggression. This is what our tradition tells us. Ahimsa does not mean lack of courage. Ahimsa does not mean to be dominated by the aggressor. Ahimsa pratisthayam tat sannidho vair tyaga. Ahimsa means that when ahimsa is established, then even those who are around it, they give up the feeling of enmity, they give up the feeling of hatred. And it is, if we study our own traditions closely, then we will see. In fact, in our tradition, there is no concept of evil. Even those who abuse you, who criticize you, we have the concept of Viparit Bhakti. That concept is there. After Ravan is attacked and he is lying down, he is giving up his life, then respect is shown even to him. And Bhagwan Ram himself goes, and while standing on the side of his feet, it is acknowledged that he had great knowledge and wisdom. It is a different matter that he himself did not act according to the principles of that knowledge and wisdom, but at least share that knowledge and wisdom which you have. That is the Indian way of doing it. And Mahabharata also says, Yatnat altara bhave. I will do my best to reduce the scope for using violence. And finally, because I have already taken 25 minutes and I have to, I'm coming after more than a week, going back to Trivandrum, therefore I will conclude with this thing, that we have to understand what I said earlier, that it is important to understand any text. Any text has a context. If you divorce the text from the context, then it becomes very difficult and you come to wrong conclusions. It may be And not very difficult, because in Kerala up to 10th standard Hindi is compulsory, so people will understand. But in any case, I will translate. There are 2 lines by a Hindi poet, and I think very profound. He said, Ram, Maryada Purushottam, एक बानी, एक पत्नी, एक वचनी, एक पत्नी. कृष्ण, लीला पुरुषोत्तम. माखन चोर, चित चोर, रण चोर. We have to understand, have to appreciate, have to understand, appreciate. The context, both are avatars of Vishnu. Why this difference? Both are living in different times. Na kaschit kasya chinmitra, about Veer Savar, na kaschit kasya chinmitram, na kaschit kasya chitripu, arth tastu nibaddhyante mitrani rip vastata. There is no permanent friend, there is no permanent enemy. They are decided according to your interest. But what is this interest? This interest is not selfishness. This interest is enlightened self-interest. Enlightened self-interest means where you bend the rules, but you don't bend the rules to gain personally, but for lok sangrah, for the betterment of the society. Whatever after reading your book, after reading other material also, and earlier also I have read some pieces on Veer Savarkar, I have no doubt in my mind that he was responding, and responding very effectively, very powerfully to the challenges of the times in which he was living. And the book which Udayji has done is a wonderful book. I commend the book for the general reading, and I am sure the readers will immensely benefit from it, because it will help them to develop a perspective about the times in which our freedom movement was on and in which Veer Savarkar had lived. Thank you very much. Jai Hind.